Hello, welcome. Today we're talking to Nikhil Sama, the founder and CTO of Turgon. And Nikhil, I'll turn it over to you to give a little description of Turgon and maybe some what led you to it.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. So, Turgon is, we like to call it, the world's first AI native system integrator. Um, and so, the way we thought about this is about a year and a half ago, me and my other two co-founders started thinking about what can we do with LLMs that's going to be meaningful. And as we look through our experiences, some of the most frustrating experiences that we've had in our career were with system integrators. They're time and materials based. They always took longer than they promised. They always asked more questions and took more juice out of the system, and they made all of the money. So we said, hey, is there a way that we can use LLMs to automate some of their workflows and actually transform that industry? And as we got along that process, it started making sense from a business point of view. It's a massive industry. It's a $1.5 trillion industry. It's highly, highly fragmented. And the only problem is there's a variety of use cases. So we started with one area, which we thought was ripe for disruption, and that's data engineering. So what we're
Hmm.
focusing on is building data pipelines from legacy systems such as SAP or Oracle or NetSuite or IBM into more modern data warehouses like Snowflake or Databricks, primarily for reporting and analytics or data migration for end-of-life systems, etc. So that's kind of a little bit about Turgon.
Yeah. Was there a particular industry that you also focused on, a particular type of data pipeline that you felt was the right place to start?
Yeah, so we ran a lot into data pipelines for reporting. So we ran into a lot of customers who said, hey, we've got all of this good data, 50 years of data sitting in this IBM system that's been around since the 1970s. And I don't want to go and change the whole system. That's going to cost me 10 million bucks. I don't have that kind of money, and I really don't need it. But what I do need is somewhere to pipe this into a more modern reporting system.
Hmm.
I want to shrink that project. So that's kind of what the focus area. I would call it like a vertical focus application. Not the only thing we do, but it's certainly something we did first and where we're starting with. We're kind of open to other projects that are more repeatable, but we don't have an industry focus as such, although many of our projects have been in the hospitality and the automotive space right now.
Super interesting. In which order did it happen? Did you figure out that sound like you figured out you wanted to look at the SI space? Did you figure out data pipelines was the right entry point, or did you go find some design partners and work with them first? Like, what did that process look like?
Yeah, so not being from the SI industry, I was like the only way to discover this is to basically talk to a bunch of SIs. So we actually ended up partnering with a bunch of SIs, and we said, hey, we'll offer up our services for free to kind of help transform your projects and do them more efficiently. And through them, we got exposure to a wide variety of projects. And then the one thing we did was we kept a pretty good log of how long it's taking us to do stuff with AI and compare that to how long it's taking them to do it. So in the data pipeline space, we found that we were able to compress the timelines, the effort, and essentially also the reliability of the end code that's produced, right? So we figured that's a good place to start. It's also a fairly largest chunk of the market. It's also a good place to kind of get into the enterprise before you say like I'm gonna change the entire plumbing and kind of redo your ERP, etc.
Right, which of course has a huge trust gap to it. So it means you can actually
Absolutely.
go prove make other areas. It also means you have an ROI measure right off the bat.
That is
So there's
correct. Yes.
you have some immediate measure. That's genius. We hear folks thinking about AI and agents and how to apply it. It's actually one of the first times I've heard someone say like, "Hey, yeah, we just offered our services into another industry for free, so as to come backwards." And it's very outcome oriented, and I love that. So as you're thinking about as you have those conversations with customers, how do you express like the value that you're going to bring by converting their pipelines to an agentic model, as opposed to just building it out? Do you describe that in terms of the outcomes, number of data elements passed through, number of systems connected? How have you thought about that?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think the way to think about this and the way our customers think about this is kind of threefold, right? One is, what is the immediate benefits? That's pretty clear. You know, you've got a 12-month project that's going to be done in a month and a half. That's a pretty big deal. It's probably going to be a lot more robust because it's written by AI that truly understands your system. The cost is going to be a little bit lower too, right? So the immediate benefits are pretty obvious. The longer term benefits are actually even more compelling, because the reason why we're able to do this so fast is because we start by training our AI agent to understand the IT infrastructure of the enterprise. So we build what you'll call a data dictionary for the agent. So the agent will go in there and understand what each table and each column and each row in your database, what does it mean in a business context, right? And it will do that in a recursive fashion until it's pretty sure about what it does. And then it can use that knowledge to convert the right schemas at the Snowflake level and build the right pipelines. That's impacted your immediate project. But guess what? The next time you need another project, that data dictionary agent helps you do that so much faster. It's going to be even faster than the first time, right? So the longer term benefits are huge. Some of the drawbacks, or I don't want to call it a drawback. Some of the objections we get is that, look, do I really want an AI agent running amok in my IT services infrastructure? Like, what if it does something bad? And to counteract that, what we do is we pair them with humans. So like a traditional IT services company might give you a team of 12 humans who work over 10 months to do something. We give you a team of 2 humans who get this done in 12 months, in 6 weeks. But the important thing is that everything that the AI is doing is only a recommendation, which then gets approved by a human.
So there's an automatic human validation step as a part of it.
Absolutely.
So do you feel that your customers understand that future opportunity when they're first getting started, or are they more myopic, just looking at that first 6-week engagement?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, that's sometimes the only reason why we get it, because the cost and time savings, while they're material and significant in terms of a total percentage, they're usually not like the biggest deal in the bigger scheme of things of the IT budget. But what matters is that this long-term journey that they're on, like it opens the door for what you can do in the future, right? We don't do this anymore, but the first couple of customers that we had, they actually said, you know what, get your AI agent to do it, but I also want like a traditional IT services provider to do the same thing.
Really?
Right? Right, because I don't know if you're going to get it done, but I'm happy to gamble with you, because if it works, then I can see what the future looks like. But I don't want to gamble this project, so let's do it in parallel. But what happened there was that the traditional IT services provider went on and, like, by the way, by the time they were 20% done with the project, we were done, and it worked.
Yeah, I was going to say week 7 is like your perfect week, right? 6 weeks to do it. Week 7, like, hey, where are you guys? So how did you overcome that with other customers? So those early ones, I can understand the A/B test, and I'm assuming that was long enough ago that was sort of early days of LLM usage. How do you overcome that now?
Well, with every client, we have one more data point to give to the customers and makes them just a little bit more comfortable. So this time when they say, hey, what if these AI agents mess it up? We're like, hey, talk to these 3 other customers that we've dealt with and how happy they are, right? And it becomes easier and easier, and people get more and more comfortable, and then they don't need the alternate agreement. I still think it's going to be a while before they take the human out completely. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but even without that, the leverage is just massive.
Are you finding that the human in the loop, that the work that person needs to do is changing, or is it staying pretty consistent as you go from
Well, it's changing a lot. It's changing a lot, and I think the implication is that the quality of the human in the loop has to be superior. It's not the same guy who was on that 12-member team. This is certainly a better compensated, smarter, deeper thinker guy with a multidisciplinary kind of education. He understands a little bit of AI. He understands a little bit of the Turgon system. He understands data engineering and enterprise IT. So that's that cross-functional individual who's a lot smarter, but he can get so much done in so little time that it doesn't matter that he's better compensated.
So more T-shaped person, right? More breadth across a couple areas. Do they also have to be
Absolutely.
SMEs in terms of the business itself, or do you have to have an SME involved?
So there's a project management or a sales level SME who for the business SME, but what they do is they translate that knowledge via Slack conversations, via Zoom meeting recordings, etc., and we pipe that into the AI so that everybody becomes, including the AI agent, everybody becomes an SME on that business to the extent that they need to for the purpose of this project.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the data transformation, you actually have the schemas and data dictionaries themselves that you're pulling from, and those have a lot of clues about the relationships between the data. So as you're building an ontology and putting it together, a lot of that knowledge, that core knowledge, is already there in the data sets, as opposed to trying to solve a new problem where a subject matter expert is absolutely mandatory to help you expand into a new space. Um, it's interesting. How are you finding these folks? So I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but I'm really interested about this T-shaped person that's in the
Yeah,
loop because I think
yeah,
it's a very present problem where people trying to figure out how do you pair agents to make
yeah,
them very effective. So how
yeah.
have you gone about it?
So these would be what Alex Karp at Palantir coined the terms of forward deployed engineers,
Mm,
right? So this is what would be forward deployed engineer. Um, we haven't gotten to the point where we have one yet. Right now, our product engineers are the forward deployed engineers, and as we scale to, let's call it, 50 simultaneous projects, that's when we're going to say, hey, let's get the product engineers off and let's get some career forward deployed engineers. Right now, it's like the product engineers learn how to build the AI engines by first learning what the task is, right? So it's
yeah.
very important for them to be directly involved with each project at this point.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this area because I'm watching it change. I've seen people talking about solutions engineers and forward deployed engineers as being similar, but it strikes me that they're not actually that similar.
Yes,
Although the sales engineer, solutions engineer have to understand the business and they do need to articulate the product value and the system value in terms of the business, the FDE is a it's a deeper engineering task. They're actually digging in. They're much more like product engineers, but then they're operating within the context of the customer. And I think that
yes,
that's obviously wasn't possible previously. Like we would have called that professional service, but now not only is it possible, it actually gains advantage,
absolutely.
and the cost model can work out. So it's fascinating. Are you finding that um, as you're asking your product engineers to do that work, are they engaged doing it? Is there resistance? How's that been?
So that's an interesting one. I think I think it's about how you pitch it, right? If you because the product engineers, they're like techie researchers at heart, right? So if you
Yeah,
pitch this as an education, which it really honestly is, I think they're pretty happy learning and getting better at stuff, right? Um, you do have to kind of steer them very fast away from this notion that they're going to become like this IT services engineer, which they're not going to. But
and you don't want the customer
but
thinking that either.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But sometimes when we do a project in partnership with an IT services firm where they're doing part of it and we're doing the data pipeline, then these guys are kind of pairing up with these other
Mm,
guys. And there is certainly a temptation to think like, am I becoming one of these? And I think you have to keep reinforcing to them that, look, this is university. You're learning how stuff is done. You know?
yeah, and applying it next time, and then going back to the product and changing
Absolutely.
the product. And I think
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
the amazing loop that this creates an opportunity for, which in the past we've always said that we want our technical teams as close to the customer as possible without being overwhelmed by the customer. But this is a great way to actually close that loop and bring that knowledge back to core engineering.
Absolutely.
Um, do you find that the uh, adoption is improved as a side effect of having these people there, or is the value primarily in being able to solve that problem within that 6 week time period uh, within the customer? I'll phrase it differently. How much visibility does the customer have to the FDE, and how much does the customer value the FDE versus the FDE just being very necessary to your business so you can actually deploy more effectively?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I do think that the customer values the FDE and the product engineer because they've obviously had several SIs come in over the decades, and they've typically not had somebody of that quality come in and actually do work for them. So when they see this, they definitely see like, hey, this is a huge upgrade. Forget about the AI, just the people is a huge upgrade, right? We have to be a little careful with that because we know that that's not going to last, right? Like what's going to last is the AI,
Mm-hmm.
and the product guys will eventually will go back to product. So that can't be why the customer is buying stuff.
Exactly where I was going with that question, right?
Yeah,
Because people get accustomed to working with this amazing engineer, and then they start to expect that person to do the next project. But really,
absolutely. Yeah,
that's the essence of a professional service company, which is not what you're trying to be. This person's there to
absolutely.
help take it into the market. Um, you've moved past this moment, right? That's what you alluded to earlier. Like you're doing additional projects, additional work. What sort of like learnings did you take from starting with those initial data engineering pipelines as you move forward and start to look at other SI oriented work?
Yeah. So coming from a product background, when we started doing this, um, I wish we could only do like any ERP to any data warehouse to any kind of reporting system, like do that pipeline again and again, right? But the guys on the GTM and sales side say, hey guys, we can't be giving up on all of these other projects that are just a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
So that's obviously always been kind of the friction between product and sales. And it has been in our company as well. I think where we've settled is that um, we will need to expand beyond that, one's kind of track, but we'll expand into areas that have two things. One is that they have to be repeatable kind of pipelines. So there's another product being built. And two, to a large extent, it should be using the modules that we built for the data pipelines as Lego blocks. So we're building on top of them. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I think as long as those two
As much leverage
criteria are
as you
met,
can,
yeah.
then you're able to move forward. Are you finding as part of that there's the hype versus reality also becomes a challenge as you're starting to work with your customers? Are there expectations well aligned to what you can actually do?
You know, it's ironical, but I've usually found it to be the opposite,
Oh,
where
fascinating.
people come in pretty cynical, like, are you guys just saying AI and really just you're just gonna put like a bunch of humans to this?
Yeah.
That's kind of what they come in, and then once they see the demo, they're like, okay, this is real. It's not just like some humans using ChatGPT on the terminal. There's an actual product here. And then when they see the product, learn about their system, that's when they're like, wow, this is actually pretty unique. And I think that's when the expectations change. They go from you're not doing anything to now you can do everything. Because
Yeah.
now that you got this agent, it understands my data. Now why can't it do that and why can't it do that? And so it's a little it transforms a little bit along the journey. It's actually a little comical.
Yeah, it's funny how they almost come in underhyped and then they get
Yeah,
overhyped after they have
absolutely.
experience. Now they believe everything. What about the buyer? Are you finding that that's changing as well? Is it CIOs who are coming in, and is it IT engineering teams, or are you getting pull from the business side, sales ops, biz ops, who are trying to see COOs and whatnot? Is that shifting as well?
Um, So in our customer is typically the CIO.
Mm,
Obviously, the CIO doesn't build IT products or reports, etc., in silo. It's typically as a result of a demand from somebody on the business side. Um, we have tried sometimes kind of going to the business side and saying, "Hey, you could use these reports. Why don't you go tell the CIO?" But I think we've learned that that's a much longer sales cycle, something
Yeah.
that we're not prepared for. So we'd just rather find CIOs who already have like a bunch of projects that they need to execute and then execute those for them.
Yeah, it's the classic low-hanging fruit. Do you think the other one becomes possible as you get further down and the expectations start to become more common and people know that, oh, an agent can likely do this work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in accounts that we've already done some work in, and everybody knows about it, and everybody can trust the agent. Yeah, absolutely. The sales guy will come and tell the IT guy, "I need this report." And by the way, I know you used to always say 12 months, but I don't see why you need 12 months anymore. You know?
Yeah, you're the CIO's best friend until that happens, and
Yeah.
then not so much.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting you brought up trust. Do you think the trust circle needs to go beyond engineering, or how do you see that changing?
Uh, Again, a double-edged sword. I think we'd rather be the CIO's hidden weapon, the one that makes
Mm,
him look like a superstar, rather than become this thing that everybody says, "Hey, it's really easy to do it with Turgon, so CIO, go get them." I don't think we want to get there. I think we'd rather be the CIO's hidden superpower, if that's what you mean.
it is, and I think it's interesting. Like I'm finding some folks want to make their AI products very visible in the organization, but others are trying to be exactly as you said, like, hey, we're the superpower for the CIO. We make them a hero, as you said, which means that maybe the business doesn't know that Turgon is the solution underneath. And I'm actually just trying to figure out like that seems to be a change. There's some excitement about having AI in the system, but then there's also a huge amount of value to not overexposing.
Yes. So I think the business can know that stuff in IT is happening faster and more efficiently as a result of AI. They don't necessarily need to know that there's this Turgon agent that just does it all for them and the CI is not doing anything anymore. You know?
Well, I mean, and I don't too many CIOs want that as the message either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
certainly, there's also fear that comes in of, well, wait, that becomes yet another party that can actually upset the apple cart because they don't necessarily understand exactly how it's working or what it's doing. They're not directly in front of it. But in some cases, I've seen talk to folks building agents where the business has to become involved just for the agent to be successful. That's the SME involvement, and so that's a really complicated road to navigate. And it sounds like you're able to focus in and that clarity around the integrations, around the data pipelines, of bringing the data together means you can sort of isolate out some of those other concerns, which I would imagine has made it a lot more straightforward.
Yeah. I think it depends on what vertical you're in. Like, so if you're doing like a SDR agent or a customer support agent, yeah, there's a lot of business context you need before you can build that agent. But if you're
Yeah.
doing an IT services agent that's building pipelines, like a 90% of the context is actually that you need is actually technical in the IT sphere. Yeah, there's a little bit of, okay, you need to know what the business is, so that when there's a customer, that is it a truck driver or is it a is it a hedge fund manager? You
Right,
need
right,
to know a
right.
little bit about what the business is doing, but it's relatively small than it would be in other areas.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, where do you see agentics going? Since you're, in the thick of it, building true agentic systems around these pipelines, we keep seeing new models are showing up. Kind of, where's your sense of how this is progressing?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So on one hand, um, I think what catches the news is when are we going to see AGI or super intelligence, right? Like when are we going to see this one model that can rule them all and that can answer any question that you want, right? Um, and that will happen, and it'll happen in due course, right? But in the interim, or potentially even after that happens, it's probably going to be much more efficient to do specific workflows with an agent that's not a generally intelligent agent, but something that has specific intelligence. Just like you could have like the smartest human in the world. It doesn't mean he's always going to be most efficient at a specific task like customer support or building a data pipeline, right? There are people who are not generally intelligent but are really good at one particular thing. I think in the same way, you will get AGI and you will get super intelligence, but there will always be these specific agents that are better at those specific tasks than the others, simply because they don't have to do the probabilistic recursion for the specific task, right? There's a lot of it that's shortcut. And I'll give you an example. In the case of a data pipeline, you can have an AGI or a super intelligent agent figure it out. Yeah, sure. It's just going to take them like a lot longer, and it's going to take them a lot more compute because they have to figure out, hey, should I
Every single
do
thing.
this? As opposed to like a specific agent that's hard coded to do that and only thinks about the variables there.
Yeah, I've started to think of that as like hard focused. It's like you've narrowed their focus to a very specific task. The mechanisms itself is not, is non-deterministic. Do you see on this path that you're going to be connecting to more and more non-Turgon agents? So Turgon is like in the pipeline. Are you imagining that you're going to start to see more and more task-specific agents showing up that you'll have to interact with in order to manage the pipeline? How do you see that working?
Yeah, absolutely. We connect to lots of agents already. We don't try to reinvent the wheel. When there's specific parts of the task that other agents are doing, better than us or whatever, they've just done it, and we don't need to rebuild it. We don't rebuild it. So for instance, for writing a bunch of code, there's Claude Code and there's Cursor. They can't do it on their own because they don't have the context of what the IT infrastructure looks like. But if we can filter out and give them exactly the context that they need, they'll do a pretty good job writing the code, and that's what we'll use.
Do you also see them in the enterprise network itself? Are you seeing other agents starting to appear in the enterprise, or are you still much more early days with these customers?
Well, okay, so there's certainly agents around. They're pretty siloed, so it's not like you can talk to them or these agents are talking to each other. They're all kind of in their silos. They're all in some kind of POC. That, by the way, for the most part, isn't working right now. Not because AI isn't ready. It's more because I think the humans in the enterprise aren't ready for it.
Yeah.
And I think that will change.
Yeah. No, we're seeing the same thing. There's a huge backlog of evaluation and trust that needs to happen as people are starting to get these POCs and trying to take them to market. But I think it's an interesting moment which hasn't happened yet, but it's on the horizon. I don't know how far. There will be enough of these point specific agents in the larger enterprise. It'll start to make sense to figure out how to connect them. How do they start to
Absolutely.
have those conversations? Yeah. We're just not quite there yet, but we're still, but it's visible. I think that's the interesting bit, is it's starting to become visible. As you said, you can see that there are other POCs happening. Those POCs will eventually move to production, and then it'll make sense to start connecting the dots between them.
Absolutely.
So I love to close. I think we're wonderful conversation. I love to close these conversations on the human side, even though we're talking about agents and AI. And on the human side, what's the new skill? What's the human skill that you think people need to strengthen or find or adapt to help them deal with this world of agents and potential agentics?
That's both a philosophy. So I'll answer in two ways, right? There's a philosophical angle and there's a technical angle, right? From a technical angle, I think it's going to be immensely valuable to have a basic understanding of, at a high level, like a non-technical level, of how AI agents work, so that you're able to prompt them properly to get stuff done, because then you will be essentially generally intelligent and able to do a bunch of tasks, right? So from a technology standpoint, I think that is a super skill to develop for the next decade. More on the philosophical side, when a bunch of people are good enough to prompt these agents and become generally intelligent, and potentially there's an AGI or a super intelligent being that's doing a bunch of work, what will humans do? God knows, but my guess is that like EQ and understanding people and and leadership and being able to like move hearts and souls, I think that's something that it's going to take a lot longer for AI to get to.
Yeah, I can imagine that we've got a ways to go before that becomes a possibility, but it makes a lot of sense. The
Absolutely.
what's that?
So absolutely.
Oh, yes. And I don't know when. In some sense, the AGI angle is. I agree with you. It's interesting, but it's somewhere out there, either far away or near. But it doesn't. In some sense, it doesn't matter, right? The human. We're already seeing a lot of these changes happen. So I love that answer. That humans need to lean into the EQ and the leadership and how to
Absolutely.
connect. And on the other side, it's actually well connected. On your more immediate, it's communication at the end of the day, and that's fascinating. Well, Nikhil, thank you so much for the conversation today. Really appreciate it. Wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Matt, for having me.
Absolutely.
Are we just turning it off or?
Yep.